In Module 8 to Objective 10, we're going to look at hair production and types of hair. The body is largely covered with hair, with the exception of a few sites. We do not grow hair on our palms, regardless of what you might have been told. We do not grow hair on the soles of our feet, the lips, or parts of the external genitalia. In considering hair growth on palms and soles, we can probably come up with a reason as to why we do not grow hair in those regions. The palms and soles are covered with epidermal ridges, and these give rise, or these constitute finger and footprints. And the purpose of those epidermal ridges, or those prints, are to increase the surface area. When your hand comes into contact with the surface, those ridges, epidermal ridges, increase the surface area, which allows for a better grip. Whether you're trying to walk across the ground and your feet are coming into contact, or whether you're holding something and your hand comes into contact. Hair on those surfaces would only impede that contact. So this is probably why hair was never popular on the palms or the soles. In terms of function, hair protects and insulates. Insulation, we do not have enough body hair, at least most of us don't, to serve a major function in terms of insulation. But if you think about other mammals with thicker fur, you can imagine that they're quite able to insulate their bodies and hold in heat. We do use hair to protect. We have about 500,000 hairs on the surface or top of our heads, and that hair will help protect our scalp from the ultraviolet radiation emitted by the sun. So we do utilize it in some sense. Hairs guard openings against foreign debris. Every day as we inhale air, we bring in a tremendous amount of dust and other particles. And the nose hairs will actually help capture some of those large particles and filter them before they reach our lungs. We also have hairs within our ear canals to help, again, to help repel large particles, insects, things of that nature. Our hairs serve also in a sensory fashion in that any type of movement on a hair will register. So even very light touch can be sensed due to the presence of the hairs and the nerves that are associated with those. If we look at the structure of hair, we find an hair follicle, and it's the follicle itself that produces the non-living hair. Hair is not alive. The follicle is rinsed. It's wrapped in a connective tissue sheath, and that connective tissue sheath is closely associated with the root hair plexus. This is sensory nerves, and of course this is what helps detect any type of light sensation that we find within the environment that stimulates those hairs. Other structures associated with hair include the erector pili muscle. This is a smooth muscle, so we know that it's involuntary. We have no voluntary control. And when this muscle contracts, it actually swings the bulb or the follicle in this direction, and it causes the hair, which was leaning to some degree, it becomes erect. It stands straight up on its end. Let me fast forward here. One slide, I have a diagram. Here we have a relaxed erector pili muscle. You can see that it's very elongated, and the hair itself is at an angle as it exits the epidermis. Upon contraction of that erector pili muscle, you see that the bulb is swung in this particular direction, and this causes the hair to become erect. When that hair becomes erect, it kind of bunches the skin surrounding the opening of that hair, and that creates basically a goosebump. We have two major reasons as to why or when goosebumps appear. Goosebumps can appear when we are cold. I think we've all experienced goosebumps when we get cold. Goosebumps can also appear during certain emotional states. We've probably all experienced a scary movie and had chills followed by goosebumps. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background as to why we produce goosebumps during an emotional state, we again have to visit other mammals. If you consider a dog or a cat, if they become frightened, their hairs often stand on end. We've always seen frightened dogs or cats with their hair raised. And ultimately what this does is it makes the animal look larger than it actually is. And this is a way to intimidate. If you appear larger, you're likely stronger than what some that you would have been if you were smaller, and that intimidates whatever it is they're scared of. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Of course, again, it's nothing that we can use. Let me back. Another accessory structure would be the sebaceous gland. And the sebaceous gland is represented right here. And we'll talk more about sebaceous glands later. But the function of the sebaceous gland is to lubricate the hair. Today in society, it's socially unacceptable to have what we would perceive as greasy hair, but much of that grease is from the sebaceous gland, and it actually helps to coat and protect the hair. Hair is non-living, and it can become very brittle, and it can break relatively easy, and this lubricant, the product of these sebaceous glands, help to prevent hair from breakage. Of course, we spend a tremendous amount of money on shampoos every year to keep the oil out of our hair, which only promotes breakage, and then we have to spend more money to go get those split ends cut off, or to buy conditioner to help replace some of those natural oils. So anyway, sebaceous glands also play a role in controlling bacterial growth. Other regions of the hair, we can identify the hair root from the hair shaft. And the major difference between these two structures is whether or not the structure is attached to the integument. The hair shaft is not attached to the integument. And I know it's kind of hard to visualize in this figure 510, but the shaft begins somewhere at this region. This line shows the boundary between the shaft and the root. And you can see here that it has pulled away from the integument. And of course, the shaft will continue upwards. The hair root is the lower part of the hair, and this region of the hair is attached. It's firmly attached to the integument. So that's the differences between those two structures. This is a histology slide of a hair follicle showing the various components of the hair. Hair production begins at the base of the hair, and Of course, this base is located deep within the dermis. The hair papilla, this region right here, contains both the vasculature as well as the nervous supply. And it's the hair bulb itself that actually produces the hair. The hair bulb is a layer of dividing cells, basal cells, that produce the hair itself. And as hair is being produced, it pushes the hair that has already been produced up and out. And this process will continue throughout much of your life. Hair is largely composed of keratin. The hair itself becomes keratinized. When we look at the different regions over here, and I don't have the figure listed, but it is from your text, we have a cross-section of the hair. And there's a lot of anatomical terms associated. We're just going to focus on the medulla, which is the innermost region of the hair, followed by the cortex, and then following that is the cuticle. The medulla contains soft keratin. This is a very flexible form of the protein. And the cortex and the cuticle both contain hard keratin. It's considerably stiffer, and it's this hard keratin that actually gives hair its somewhat stiff property. We have different types of hair. During embryonic development, we have a hair type that is known as lanugo. This is embryonic hair. And this hair persists through about the first trimester, after which most of it is shed. And once we finish embryonic and fetal development, we can identify two types of hairs. And these two types of hairs can be found on all of us right now. We have vellus hairs. This is the peach fuzz. It's very soft, very fine hair, and this covers much of the body surface. And this diagram over here, we can see on the side of this lady's neck all of this peach fuzz. And then we have the terminal hairs. These are the heavily pigmented hairs. We find these hairs on the eyebrows, the eyelashes, the head, and then later, after puberty, we also get terminal hairs within the axilla as well as the inguinal region. So we get pubic hairs and armpit hairs, if you will. Hair color is produced by melanocytes. We saw melanocytes when we were looking at skin pigmentation. Well, we also find melanocytes at the hair papilla, and it's the different forms of melanin that give rise to the different hair colors that we find within the population today. So melanin can go from a very dark brown all the way to a reddish color. And of course, hair color is controlled by genetics.